Alliance's Jack Bloom has for a long time been vocal about this Life Esidimeni tragedy. Yesterday he released a statement saying some of the expenses related to the hearings are excessive. The Gauteng government says the 47 million rand cost is justified. We'll get to that in just a moment with Jack Bloom. But first of all, in terms of the decision that was handed down today by Justice Esidimeni, 1.2 million rand plus other expenses. Is a life worth that?
Well, I think, he had to make a determination, and basically he said it was, the initial claim was 1.5 million, and he gave 1 million for violation of constitutional rights and 200,000 for pain and suffering and funeral costs. I mean, obviously he had to take a variety of factors into concern. The total tag, in my estimate, for all the claimants is going to be 175 million rand, which is a lot more than the 28 million rand that they initially budgeted for it.
And where does that money come from? Is that straight out of the Treasury, or is there special allowance made? Does it come out of the provincial budget? How is that? Because they have 3 months, I understand, to find or to pay that money over.
Well, they don't have the money now. They've only budgeted 28 million rand from the Premier's office, and this is the new budget starting on April the 1st. Gauteng Health Department, as we know, is virtually bankrupt, so I think they're going to have to go back to Treasury and find the extra amount. It's not just 175 million rand, there's all the other extra costs associated with it, so it's going to be well over 200 million rand.
Has anything changed in the healthcare dynamic as a result of this? Or, once this is all beyond us, will the status quo resume, do you think?
Well, I hope not, but I have to say that I have done a number of visits to psychiatric facilities in hospitals, and they're not sufficient. I'm talking about a specialized psychiatric ward in various hospitals, and they're deficient. We've had suicides, we've had attacks on other patients. Security is not what it should be. There's a psychiatric ward in the Charlotte Mcneke Johannesburg Hospital that's supposed to be revamped. At present, it's taken 7 years to revamp it. There's 2 psychiatric wards at the Helen Joseph Hospital that need to be refurbished. So I'm afraid the inefficiency in the Gauteng Health Department is still letting our mental health patients down.
In what respect, though? Where are the deficiencies lacking?
Well, inadequate facilities still for psychiatric patients.
Which would mean what? Is it basic things like beds and blankets, or was it beyond that?
Terrible facilities at the Charlotte Mcneke Johannesburg Hospital. I mean, it's the most uncongenial for surroundings for a mental health patient, and the provincial government has recognized this, but they've gone through 3 contractors. It's either corruption or inefficiency. At the end of the day, we don't have decent facilities at a major hospital for psychiatric patients.
And there are still people, you've been saying for some time, that are unaccounted for.
This is the horror. There's still now, by official count, it's come down to 44. But can you imagine, as we stand here, there are 44 unaccounted for patients. I think at some stage we have to presume them dead because they need specialist care. And so we'll never know the full death toll. We've got 144 officially acknowledged dead people as a result of this disaster, 44 unaccounted for, and the true death toll could be a lot higher.
This is partly a rhetorical question, but of that 44, where might they be, and what efforts are being made to try and close that loop?
Well, that's why I laid charges of missing persons at the police. At that stage, there were 62. They seem to have found a fair number of them, but 9 of them are actually still collecting social grants. I don't know why it's so difficult to find them. But can I tell you something horrific? 7 of them, we don't even have their full name. So how are we going to find them? And I've said to the Provincial Health Department, please, can't you give pictures, photographs, because that's how you find missing persons. So I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult to find the remaining 44, and they need specialist care. So
and when you put this to the provincial authorities, what do they tell you?
Well, I've persistently said, why can't you release photographs? Go public with this. I think the public would like to assist. The homeless person down the road could be a mentally ill person who's just trying to...
Are they unwilling to help, or do they not have the photographs?
Well, I wish they would be honest with us. I'd be distressed if they didn't have a photograph in a file, but how do you expect to find a missing person if you don't have a full name or at least a photograph?
Are you expecting criminal charges to follow this?
Absolutely. I think what Justice Esidimeni did say, that he's handing over the official transcript, and he made some very severe findings that you know, various people lied outright and that there were criminal acts performed, you know, the fraudulent licensing of these NGOs. So there's a raft of charges that can be laid. I would hope that culpable homicide is laid, and even murder.
You've questioned the costs, Jack Bloom, of this particular arbitration hearing, but let me put it to you that you're simply trying to score political points here. Surely the cost of this hearing and the result that we have seen today is worth the 47 million rand that has been ratcheted up.
Well, I acknowledge that we had to do the process and that there were certain costs that had to be done. But one of the costs was over 8 million rand for the Esidimeni Conference Centre as a venue, and this is actually owned by the provincial government. So, you know, it's leased to a company to run it, but I don't know why a provincial government facility for 45 days of hearings, you can work out the arithmetic, I think that's excessive, 8 million rand simply for a venue that is actually owned by the provincial government. So I'm going to ask further questions of the legislature, because I hope that, you know, a particular company...
So you've raised the issue, but you haven't got the answers to that yet. I mean,
not yet.
No one's given you an official response.
No, they haven't, and I hope that some people aren't trying to make a profit out of this, because obviously we needed to do this process. They needed to make certain expenses, you know, transport, catering, lawyers' costs, that was all necessary. But I agree with you, this cost was absolutely necessary, but I think this judgment by Justice Moseneke, I think, is a binding precedent, and it really just sends out a very strong signal that you do not violate people's constitutional rights.
Jack Bloom, thank you very much indeed. Now, some of the families still reeling from the deaths of their loved ones are by and large happy with Justice Moseneke's findings. Let's